We're now joined by Carl Reed Jr. from CBS and 247 Sports. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and I'm David Smoak and Garrett Ross running the mothership. Carl, thank you. Coach, I call you Coach. We appreciate your time. I've kind of discussed what I follow you on your timeline. I started doing that a few months back and a lot of philosophical thoughts that you have. Let's start. We were just bringing up Dion, who has players who entered the portal, bringing players from the portal. What are your overall thoughts on how he's handled the first year and a half or so at Colorado?
Well, I think that he's done with his program what he's needed to do for them to find success. You know, a lot of people, when you talk about the transfer portal, it's still kind of new to people. But Colorado is not really in a position to depend exclusively or even from a majority standpoint on high school football players. It was too big of a hill to climb. It was just too much going on. High school players don't even stick around anymore for you to allow them to be developed. So I think that the transfer portal has done something to infuse a level of talent in Colorado that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to get.
Carl, do you think that in the coming years he will use his cachet to get more in front of the high school recruits? Because I know he says he wants them to come to his house, which is a great strategy. But I have a feeling that just given who he is, that if he started showing up in living rooms, that there are coaches who are really good at that may not stand a chance.
Have you ever been anywhere with Dion Sanders before?
No.
So he's not like a regular guy that can just walk down the street or walk in the mall. So I've been with him before, and you talking about if he comes into a neighborhood, you're talking about you will potentially have to have the fire marshal come. Like, that's the amount of people that will come. So it's also a security issue. And I know that when people talk about college coaching, they can look at it a number of ways. But in all honesty, having been with them and been around him, he doesn't have the opportunity to move around like a normal person.
Carl, with the transfer portal turning into what it is to, where basically we have no restrictions now, it's obviously a beautiful thing for the athletes, but how do you begin to wrap your head around how to even operate these days as far as the appeal of the high school athlete, but the lack of development time that you have now? I mean, what kind of a challenge has this grown into for coaches, some of the unforeseen things potentially?
Well, development is over. It's no more development. It's can you play? Are you ready to play? And that's not necessarily a great thing for the player, but it is what it is. And everybody has to remember it's the college coach's fault while the system is what it is today. They're the ones who abused the old system and made it this way, and things went to court and whatnot. So you just have to be able to adjust, and it definitely is uncomfortable for people. Sometimes kids make bad decisions, but coaches make bad decisions as well, and just people have the right to make the choices they want to make.
So you say there's no development. Does that hurt the game in the end, that players are not able to marinate, so to speak, and get better along the way?
Well, it'll hurt the product of the game, on the mid to lower levels, but the championship caliber teams are going to always get the best players. They're going to always find a way to win and a way to get things done, but you have to be more ready to play when you go in now than you did in the past. You're not going to see college coaches willing to take chances on kids that they could project, 2-3 years down the line, this kid is going to end up being a great player, because you're just not working with that type of time anymore.
I've looked at your Twitter timeline. You've got a lot of different guys that you're kind of high on that are in the portal. Who are some of those guys that you really like that you think can help someone? Because there are guys in the portal that are still developmental, or they're 3-year guys and all that, but kind of maybe the immediate hits for you.
Well, the guys that are in the portal, this window are guys that, are a lot of these are the guys that are getting pulled away from programs from a standpoint of the programs are trying to move on from them. So like Linus Knoll is a guy at Texas Southern, a defensive tackle that is getting a lot of interest. You got the big D tackle from TCU. So defensive linemen are at a premium right now if you can find one that can really play. But for the most part, what people don't understand about the second portal window, this is the window full of guys who programs were moving away from.
Carl, when it comes to the handling of the transfer portal, like you said, it's college football's fault. It's the school's fault. It's the coach's fault as much as anything. And I know they tried to kind of like in bad faith say, well, we can't pay the players because then there's going to be agents and this and that. But how much of that side of things have you seen? Like, what can you kind of explain about that side of it? Is there concern about kind of who's handling the players, or do you think that's been better than it was expected to be when that was kind of a scare tactic initially?
There's definitely going to always be concern about who's handling the players and who's giving them advice. I know of several players who got some information from guys that probably told them some things that weren't true because they were trying to make, profit and do business. But at the end of the day, you can be as concerned as you want to be. This is the system that we have, and you better learn and maneuver and deal within this system or you're going to get left behind.
Carl, what would your advice be for a young man that enters the portal? What are all of the checklist of what he or she, depending on sport, but let's say football, what are some things that they need to kind of go through as a cross-check before they do that? And if somebody hasn't contacted them a day or two into it, what does that say?
Well, number one, what I would say to you is that you need to be extremely self-aware about who you are and what you are as a player. The problem with developmental players is that most of them don't believe that they're developmental players, so they can't stick around and be developed because they get antsy and they want to go ahead and they want to move forward, and kind of and get an opportunity to play right away. So I would tell you, number one, you need to be extremely honest and self-aware, and that's really hard for players to do. Number two, you need to really value the education that you're walking away from. And I think that that's something that's really getting lost in this. Guys are walking away from full scholarships, girls as well. On the women's side of sports, they're walking away from full scholarships to roll the dice, so to speak, on if they're going to make it or not. What every athlete needs to understand that we cover, and the people that we're talking about is the top 1% to 5% of guys. That's all everybody wants to talk about. So you might be watching the media, the news, the ranking services, the college coaches and all of that, and you're trying to maneuver like a guy that you don't have the same ability as. And so you're seeing guys do big deals and better position themselves in the draft, but your game doesn't talk loud like that. So the education has to really be a value for you, and you really got to think it through. Most guys that are transferring, they shouldn't. They should stay where they're at.
What did you think of Arch Manning at Texas? And, he had to sit a year, which most guys don't want to do anymore. And, he's going to sit this year as well. But looks like, eventually this is going to really pay off for the Horns.
Special player, and obviously his situation is different. So we can't compare, Arch Manning's situation to a normal player. He's obviously the family he comes from, the way he's been groomed, the way he's been tutored, the way his mental capacity is going to be different because he's dealing with, 2 Hall of Famers for sure, maybe a third one, you looking at. So his upbringing has been different, but he's definitely a special talent. He's playing for Steve Sarkisian, which is arguably the best quarterback coach in all of football. Now, that's at any level. That's high school. That's college or professional. So I think it's definitely going to bode well down the long run for the Longhorns.
I saw the tweet you had out. I guess this might have been on Saturday or Sunday that they said he was only one because his name was Manning. He kind of shut that. We saw a glimpse of him at the end of last year. Not much of one, but he did put on a show, even if it's a spring game.
It's always low-hanging fruit to say that a guy is only in position because of the family that he comes from. But I can assure you that there's a lot of guys that played in the NFL that sons are not any good at football.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and look, and there's a lot of them who didn't get recruited all that well either.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Look, Texas was not. I think it was funny because people would say that Texas was not in any position, especially before last season, where they could just be like, "Yeah, we'll just take them." Like they can't do that. So yeah, sometimes you got to get a little credibility to the kid. I think especially it was really smart of him to go and sit, just because the division he was playing in Louisiana, he wasn't going to see a lot of guys that he'll see just in practice at the first day at Texas. And now that he has, it makes him that much better of a player. Like you said, most guys should just stay where they are and get better.
But I'll tell you this, to be totally honest with you, most guys, 90% of the guys don't see that type of talent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, high school to college is different. I don't care if you played on a small team in Louisiana or if you played at IMG or Mater Dei. If who you played against made that big of a difference, then every guy that played at IMG and Mater Dei would be starters as true freshmen and they would be in the NFL. And we know that that's not true.
What are your thoughts, Carl, about the SEC and the Big Ten? And do you think at some point down the road in the next 4 to 5 or 6 years that there will be two big conferences and everything else?
Well, they definitely have both made moves to separate themselves from the pack in terms of how they want to conduct the business of college football. You never know. There's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of politics that go into making such a move, and you never know. It would take an extreme amount of courage from leadership to make a move like that. And so I don't like speculating on things, but I would say right now that everybody's going to stay under the NCAA for the foreseeable future.
You have met a lot of people along the way. You've mentioned your friendship with Dion and many, many others. You've coached. You got out of that to become an analyst. What was that decision like, and why did you make that decision?
Well, I think that when you start talking about kind of the way that things are changing, I was already looking for something new and challenging. You have a ceiling as a high school coach, and you can only go so far with it, so high. We had won a state championship. We had been really, really successful. And I got an opportunity. I don't know that I was looking for that kind of put in front of me, and I looked at it. If I didn't get the opportunity, if they didn't come get me, I'd probably still be coaching high school.
Do you feel like that you kind of just say it in a very simple, not saying it's not complicated, but in a simple way, the way you can communicate your point and opinion?
It's just who I am. You know, I can, it's who I am. It's the way I've always been. I try to get straight to the point.
How do you explain Dion Sanders, the football coach, Dion Sanders, the person? We just mentioned this a minute ago. As new as some of the things he's going to try and is trying to do, he still seems to have, Carl, a good old school blood in him.
Well, it depends on who's asking the question. Right, I get a lot of recruits, a lot of kids that'll call me and they'll say they want to play for coach, at Colorado and even prior to that at Jackson State. But all of them don't understand how disciplined he is and how principled he is. And so in an era where kids are accustomed to doing what they want to do, the way they want to do it, he's really not the guy for that. You're going to really have to do what he wants you to do in a very old school way for you to be able to play for him. In terms of just as a human being, I've met very few people in my life who do exactly what they say they're going to do. And so to me, his word is gold.
Why Colorado? What was, besides the fact it was an opening, he had kind of done what he could do at Jackson State. What was it there? Was it going to be that they're going to let him be him?
I think that's a question for him.
Great answer. That's a great answer.
I've been fascinated with the Cormani McClain, because he was such a highly touted high school player, and to hear his high school coach say that, look, this was, you were going to have to ride him, and he was going to have to do the little things and get him to do that, and if Dion can't make him do it, somebody else is going to have to, but he was worried about it. To see already, to me, that shows a lot about where Dion kind of is as a coach, that he's willing with, a 4-8 team last year to be like, look, potential means nothing to me at this point. You got to do the right thing. What was your take on, letting a guy like Cormani McClain walk out the door like it appeared they kind of needed to?
The high school coach in me, the community leader in me, and the advocate for kids in me will always say this. I want the very best for Cormani, and I hope that he finds a place that gives him everything that he needs and that he works really hard and all his dreams come true.
Carl, what is the fine line in wanting all of that, and yet a young man just doesn't get it or is not mature enough to handle it? How long do you go until you have to say you need to find another place to go?
Well, we don't know for sure what happened, so it's a lot of speculation. But I will say this. I think that you help kids as much as you can for as long as you can. And when you get into a situation, that has to be what always comes first. Coaching is still a labor of love. It's a labor of trying to help turn boys into men. And sometimes, you may not be the best fit, or the kid may not be the best fit for you, but you still wish him the best, and you hope that he finds what he's looking for.
Do you think coaching now, and you mentioned you got out of it because of an opportunity, but do you think coaching now is more difficult than ever before, or is it easier because the rules now favor you accumulating talent?
It all depends on if you see the glass half empty or half full. It all depends on how you're looking at it. For some guys, it has been a major advantage. For other guys, the rules have been at their detriment. It just all depends on how you view the world.
If you could run college football and wave a wand to make it, I don't know if it's better or more stable, what would you do?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would mandate that every kid that gets a scholarship, that the school has to keep the young man and allow him to finish his education. I would allow transfers in the transfer portal, but I would only allow you to transfer once. You would have to sit until you got your degree on the second transfer. I thought that was a good rule, and I think that things kind of got out of whack with that. I would also do away with the collectives. We got to remember, when we started name, image, and likeness, it was supposed to be for players' ability to market themselves off the field. I would stop the pay for play that the collectives brought to the game.
Is that hay out the barn? There's no way you're going to get it back?
It's really hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
It is. It absolutely is. What does allowing players an unlimited amount of transfers actually do to the young man?
I don't, it's hard. Everything is different, right? But I would say for the majority of kids, it puts them really behind in terms of graduating. And I think this is also not just, you got to look at graduation. Who are your relationships? It used to be a time when the guys you went to college with, the guys you played with, those are the best men in your wedding. Those are the guys in your wedding. Those are the guys that become godparents to your children. Those are the guys you really build a bond with. Well, if you went to 4 years in four schools in 4 years, who are those guys to you now? It has a tremendous impact on the second half of your life. Also, what school are you with? Who's going to help you get jobs? What college coach? What university? What enrichment center at a university? So I don't think that some of those things were looked at. But anytime that you pushed a rule through, there's going to always be unintended consequences. And that's some of those.
Last thing for you, Carl. What have you learned the most about this part of the business from where you were as a coach, as a mentor, and a community leader, as you mentioned, all of that? What have you learned most about being in the media business? What has been something that has surprised you or has been like, man, this is different than I thought?
Nothing surprises me. I've been in the game for 20 years. I've seen it all. I've heard it all. I've watched it all. I would just tell anybody, whether you're coaching, whether you're a player, whether you're in the media, whether you're an agent, wherever you're at in the game is cold. Put your coat on.
I love that. That's true. Thanks for your time, man. It's great we got you on. We appreciate it. Good luck with what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, my brother.
Carl Reed Jr. with some philosophical and his thoughts. He's close to Dion.